Tonight we're going to be talking about Jesus and his Galilean ministry up into Jerusalem this evening, so I assure you, you will feel his presence. So tonight's program is called Jesus Ministry Nazareth to Jerusalem. It is difficult to know for sure, but I think it's safe to assume that Joseph, Mary's betrothed, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, were from Nazareth. How do I know that? Because in Luke wrote, in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin engaged to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. And he came to her and said, "Greetings, favored one, the Lord is with you." But she was much perplexed by these words and wondered what sort of greeting this might be. The angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, for you have found favor with God. And now you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you will name him Jesus. He will be great, and he will be called the Son of the Most High, and the Lord God will give to him the throne of his ancestor David. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end." So this is where the story of Jesus starts. In the city of Nazareth, there is, right up here, this is the Sea of Galilee, and this is Nazareth. In the city of Nazareth, there is a church called the Annunciation Church, and it is named after the Annunciation of Mary. Annunciation means announcing, and that is what the angel Gabriel did with Mary. So, this is obviously an aerial view that I found on the web, and I wanted you to be able to see both the top, the dome, and also the front, because you can't see them in the same frame any other place. So this is a street view from where we were over here having coffee, and this is when you get right up to the front of it. The Church of the Annunciation is a Catholic church in downtown Nazareth. It has one of two claimants to the site of the Annunciation, in which the angel Gabriel appeared to the Virgin Mary, announced that she would give birth to Jesus. The other being the Greek Orthodox Church of the Annunciation, also in Nazareth, because the Catholics and the Orthodox couldn't agree on where the place was. And so let me remind you what I told you probably in week 1. How can we know that this is the place of Jesus where Mary had the visitation by Gabriel? Again, very early on in the story of Jesus post-resurrection, sites that had anything to do with the life of Jesus became very popular earlier than I ever imagined. This is the nave of the sanctuary, and there are pictures of Mary, or what we would call artist renderings of Mary, all around the building. These are the apostles up here in the top. This and all the nations of the world were invited to play a part in this. And so this is the American window. It's not really a window at all. And it's three-dimensional, and it kind of looks like metal. That probably is metal. Couldn't get close enough to, knock on her dress. Well, the tradition states that there was a structure on this site by Emperor Constantine I, whose mother was St. Helena, who we talked about last week. And he helped fund the church, commemorating all those important events in Christ's life. And so this, along with the Church of the Nativity and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Well, some version of this church has been in existence since the 300s. And then it was destroyed in the 7th century by the Muslims. And a second church was built on its ruins by the Crusaders in 1102. That was destroyed in 1260 by the Muslims. In 1620, the Franciscans built a small grotto to enclose the space venerated as Mary's home. In 1730 CE now, a new church was built with permission of the Muslims who ruled over Nazareth at the time and was enlarged in 1877 CE. The church was then demolished on purpose in 1954 to make room for the current structure. So that's a story that I'm not going to repeat over and over again, but I think from maybe the first and second week I told you that this has been one of the most fought over lands in the world. And between the Muslims and the Crusaders and earthquakes and ruling parties and then rebuilding, all these buildings have been destroyed and rebuilt numerous times. In the lower levels, so back here, right here, there's a big opening in the floor. So that there's a little fence there. I don't know if you can see it, but that's open. It's a big open cavity. And underneath it, you will find this grotto of the Annunciation. And back here is what this looks like. And this is allegedly the home of Mary when the angel Gabriel came to her. Now, one thing that you're going to learn from me tonight is that if you thought that Mary and Joseph and Jesus lived in a little wooden house, that is so far from the truth. Wood is hard to come by in Jerusalem, Israel, even today. Most of the wood they have there is soft wood. Even olive wood is a soft wood. And so they don't have really building grade wood. The stuff that they have there that is wood has to be brought in from other places. And this reminds me, I forgot to do something that's very interesting to me. Carol is going to pass around first a map of Jerusalem, and it's in relief. It's a plastic map in relief, and the thing that I want you to notice about it is that I did not know this, but Israel is very mountainous. I mean, they're not huge mountains, but it's more like Kentucky than you can imagine. And so I thought it was arid and flat, and it is not. Another thing that I want Carol to pass around is a water bottle, and it's written in Hebrew, so please don't drink it. You may make a visit to the doctor. But that is water from the Jordan River. And I was always told that it was a muddy river. Look at that water. So at Yardenit, which you'll see in a moment, I dipped the water right out of that place that I got dunked, and it's amazing. It's pristine. Why did I bring it back? Well, it's a kind of a thing you do. But also, I'm going to take an eyedropper and drop a little Jordan River water in the font when we baptize from here on out. There's another little trinket here. Maybe, Carol, if you could put those in one of those soup bowls, a clean one, please. There are 3 stones. I think it's the bigger one that has a cavity in it. That came from Qumran, and remember, everything in Israel is made out of limestone, and that's how I could remember that one came from Qumran because of the Qumran caves. And the smaller piece came from Masada. The smaller limestone piece came from Masada. And then there's another piece in there that you'll be able to tell looks different than the other 2 pieces, and that's the reason I picked it up. Ezra, our guide, saw me pick it up, and he said, "Let me see that." And I showed it to him, and he said, "What you have there is a piece of Herod's palace." So that is 2,400 years old, carved. And the reason he knows that is because everything is limestone except for that one piece, which is granite. The palace was made out of granite, and that was all shipped in, and somehow they took it up that hill and got it on top of that mountain. But there wasn't much around there, so that's why it stuck out to me. Okay, back to the program. Anyway, needless to say, a lot of these sites that I saw are built and rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt. I wanted to show you a little bit about life in Nazareth. So this is not uncommon. This is a coffee shop, and this is my group. Ezra took us to one of his coffee shops. Have you ever had Palestinian coffee? It's like tar. It comes in a little Dixie cup because you couldn't drink more than that. And you see he's got one right there. And he's got one right there. It's just a little cup. And we went into this pastry shop, and the stuff is just laying out. You're going to see this over and over again in the Middle East. No big deal, no sanitation concerns there. This is a bazaar that, like that Church of the Annunciation is just right up the street. This is not uncommon in any city in Palestine. All right, we're going to move on to Bethlehem. So, Jesus, Mary and Joseph were in Nazareth, but why did he have to go to Bethlehem to get born?
Census.
A census. There was a census where you had to go back to the city of your ancestors. And the thing that's important about Joseph is that he was from the house of David. See, Jesus has to come from the line of David before he can be the Messiah, or in order to be the Messiah. So, these are the paths probably that he could have taken. This one, now that you are passing around that map, that would not be the one that they would take, because that's right over the ridge of that mountain range. I guarantee you pregnant Mary didn't walk that. It says here, this is Google Maps by the way, that this trip could be made in 32 hours by foot. Well, that's probably, 8 hours a day. If you could walk 8 hours a day, that's 3-4 days. Yeah. Pregnant Mary? I don't know. Maybe a few more, but they had to make that trip. Either way, whether they went the eastern route or the western route, it was going to be a long, difficult trip. Well, we'll get back to Nazareth in a few moments, but I want you to know that there are actually 2 Bethlehems in Israel. What a surprise. We have about 8 of them in the United States. Anyway, one in Galilee and one in Judea, and that is why in Matthew wrote that the place of Jesus' birth was Bethlehem of Judea, closer to Jerusalem. Today, Bethlehem is one of the areas fully controlled by the Palestinian Authority. In the city, 41% of the population is Christian, 59% is Muslim. Christians used to be a large majority, but their numbers have declined steadily through the 20th century. I'm pretty sure they're not 41% today. Now, this is, again, very mountainous there, and if it looks, I know, the projector is only as good as it is, but there's a modern housing up here in their hills, but there's also some, Bedouins who live in the city, and they don't care about such things. So in some ways, it's kind of trashy, kind of lower socioeconomic. I'm sure there are nice places in Bethlehem. We didn't go there because we're on a bus and we were going to certain places. There is, today, the city of Bethlehem is surrounded by 2 bypass roads for Israeli settlers, leaving the inhabitants squeezed between 37 Jewish enclaves, where a quarter of a mile of all of the West Bank settlers, roughly 170,000, live. The gap between the 2 roads is enclosed by an 8-meter-high Israeli West Bank barrier, which cuts Bethlehem off from its sister city of Jerusalem. So there it is. How would you like that for your city? But that protects the Israelis from the Palestinians, and Bethlehem is controlled by one of the more aggressive Palestinian groups. Not Hamas, but still, nevertheless, an aggressive group. To get from Galilee down to Bethlehem, which is what we did, we had to go through checkpoints. I know you can't tell very well, but those are 2 Israeli military men with rifles right there. Now this picture was the previous picture. Now it's this picture again, because our guide Ezra, who you'll see in a few minutes, was an Israeli. He was not allowed in the city of Bethlehem. So we toured in the morning, but then he got off the bus and we picked up this young lady who is a resident of Bethlehem, and she gave us the half-a-day tour of Bethlehem. I don't remember her name. All right, Bethlehem is the original Christmas town, right? So should we be surprised to see Santa Claus climbing up the side of the building? Well, yeah. I was. I took a picture. And this I just found just crazy. So we're walking down the street where all those other bazaars are and the markets, and there's this guy. He's not in the picture, and you don't know how people are going to take it when you take their picture, but he sells coffee in this urn, and it's fire brewed. There's a little fire underneath here, and this is his pile of wood, and it's just steaming away, and it smells like hot tar. Okay, Nissen Brothers is, we were told, is one of the most famous and best shops for olive wood products. This is in the store, but underneath the store, and that's where we started our tour. We went under the store first. There is a shop where there are carvers working away on olive wood things. So these are just some of the items that I wanted to show you. This is a Last Supper picture that you're going to get again in a little while. All these are nativities. You know, some of them are in a shed-like thing. Like, how many of your nativities at home are in little sheds, little barns or stables, right? No, that isn't how it was. Jesus was born in a cave. Jesus was born in a cave. At this time period in Bethlehem, Bethlehem was not as upscale as Jerusalem or some of the other cities. Bethlehem was really blue-collar shepherd folk, and they lived in caves. And so Jesus undoubtedly was born in the stable cave of the cave. So I found this interesting. Why was Jesus born in the stable when the governor said you got to go back to your ancestral home, and Joseph, being from the line of David, went to the city of David, had David Bethlehem? Why, if he was taking this pregnant woman with him, why wasn't he able to stay in his family's home? Why was he born in the stable? What's your thoughts on that? That's exactly right. That never occurred to me before. But the way Ezra explained it, so it's got to be true. Joseph and Mary showed up at the family home and said, hey, we're here for the census. Let us in. And they said, you can stay, but not that woman that you're not married to and who is pregnant. So they got sent to the barn, which was not a barn. It was a cave. They had some examples of caves from that day there, but you know, it's not like that's the house of David. It was just a cave. So I will explain this. This is the Last Supper, and I will explain more about that in a few moments. I want to show you this. This is the Stations of the Cross up here. And I'm fascinated by the Stations of the Cross ever since we did that Stations of the Cross thing one Lent. And I've suggested to Norma that we ought to use memorial money to do some Stations of the Cross. And when I saw those, I thought, oh, perfect. So I called Norma and asked her for her credit card number before I asked how much those things were. They were $14,000. They were $1,000 a piece. Wow. So Norma declined, and so did her bank. I'm just fooling her. But they were gorgeous, hand-carved out of olive wood. That would be a great thing to have, but boy, that's a lot of money. So I don't want you to think when you go to one of these shops that you're going to help out the lowly Bethlehemites who are sitting on the corner carving things out of wood for a couple of bucks. This stuff is extraordinarily expensive. I bought my sons each a little Holy Family nativity. And it does look like it's in a shed. I really wanted one of these that looked like a cave, but they were like $400 a piece. So The ones they got are hand carved from Bethlehem, from this shop, but they didn't cost $400. And when I give them to them at nearer to Christmas time, I will tell them this is now an heirloom. Don't let the kids play with it. Okay, moving on. The Church of the Nativity is in Bethlehem, and of course it is a basilica located in Bethlehem in the West Bank-controlled Palestinian territory. The grotto beneath it contains the prominent religious significance to Christians, that is the birthplace of Jesus. The grotto is the oldest site continuously used as a place of worship in Christianity, and the basilica is the oldest major church in the Holy Land to survive. So among those churches that Helen laid out and got her son to pay for, this is the oldest continuously standing one. Now, it is the oddest looking building, and it's in the city, and you can't really see how it is, but it's actually built like a cross, like many old Gothic churches are. And I want you to know, in a moment, we're going to go in through this door, and then there's this lobby, and then you go into the nave. Now, you know, our nave, that's another name for sanctuary, it has pews in it. There's no pews in there. People didn't go to church and sit down, they stood, because it's not heated. And then up here is the altar, you'll see that in a moment, but then, like the Church of the Annunciation, there is this exit and entrance on either side, and you go underneath this area to get to the grotto underneath the chancel. Okay, so how do you get in? I'm so glad you asked. You go through the door of humility. It's the only door that pilgrims can go in. You know, there are people that work there, and there are people from the town that know where the other doors are. But this is called the door of humility, and that's really how big it is. Back in this picture, it's right there. Now, the story goes that the person some Muslim actually, decided that we needed to understand the reverence for this place, and so we should bow before we enter. Well, there's no other way. So there it is. So you can see that the original door here has been bricked up, so that's the only place you can go in. And the other idea was it was built that way to keep people from entering the church on horseback, because apparently they did that in the Crusader days. This is the inside of the nave right here. So that's the high altar back there. These are the columns that hold it up. And these are mosaics that are from the 1st century that they are slowly excavating. They've been plastered over and painted over for hundreds of years, and then they found them. This thing here is a section of floor that's been removed because the original mosaic floors are located down there. This obviously is a picture I got off the internet because this is what it looked like when I was there. So we got there probably at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the place was packed. And we got in that far, and we stood there for 15 minutes. You can't tell, but this whole group is Asian. And there are people from all over the world in there, and it's just thick until you get to the back there. And there are kind of like guards, I guess you would call them, trying to keep peace in there, keep order. And our guide, that woman, she asked the guard, where we're at this place, how long till we get to the grotto? And they said 2.5 hours. So we took a straw poll of the 33 people that were in our pilgrimage, and how many of you want to go see the grotto, and how many of you don't. And the don'ts prevailed. I was not a don't. I didn't fly 11 hours to not see it, but I didn't see it. But this is so this is my picture. I got that close. All these are hanging oil lamps from every church denomination in the world, because this is the birthplace of Jesus.
And so they're just hanging all over the place. Yes, it looks gaudied up, but you know, everybody is trying to do the best they can to show reverence for this holy place. So just keep that in mind. When you get down to the grotto, so these are the steps coming down. There's another set of steps over here. These are the Orthodox brothers here who keep the line moving. And there is an altar built over the grotto. And then you get on your hands and knees and you go in there. And then that's what you see. So more oil lamps hanging there. And this star, allegedly represents the place where Jesus was born. In 2 weeks, when we get to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you're going to be surprised how alike this looks to it. Okay, Bethlehem. There was another thing that happened in Bethlehem, right? So Jesus, Mary, and Joseph are in Bethlehem. They're in a cave somewhere. The Lord has been born, and there were shepherds on the hills watching their flocks by night, and an angel came to them and announced, right? And then they went to the city to see what thing that the angels had foretold, and they were the first witnesses of the nativity. These are you can't believe how close this is to the city. This is actually part of Bethlehem there. It's the same, one is just a little farther. That metal roof is this metal roof. I should have them the other way. Interesting thing, because of the way Bethlehem is controlled by the Palestinians and the Israelis, this section is a no man's land, and it will forever be. And yet, amazingly enough, it is the shepherd's field. And when I stood there, that was one of those moments. You've asked me, when did you feel the presence of the Lord? That was one of those moments. The hair on the back of my neck stands up now. Just the fact that that is still preserved and probably will be forever is an amazing thing. By the way, there are still shepherds in Bethlehem. So that shacky looking place in one of the earlier pictures of Bethlehem, the Bedouins, there they are. They're raising their sheep in the city of Bethlehem. Look at this beautiful home here. That's a home. And it's got sheep in the field. And look at this lovely land. Yeah, what else are you going to do, right? Okay, so to honor that most important part of the story, not the most important part of the story, but an important part of the nativity story, the visitation of the angels to the shepherds, there is this Church of the Angels, which is very close to this area. It's just this way of it. And it is a smallish place, but beautiful in its own right. This is the ceiling, and when it's certain times of the day, obviously not when I was there, the light flows through those little tiny lights, and it makes spots all over the place, and it sort of makes it look like there are angels all over the place. These are angels all the way around the dome, and this is, in Latin, glory to God in the highest. And inside there are at least 4 chapels, side chapels. This one here, if you can see it, these are shepherds on their knees out on the hills with the angels declaring their good news. Then this is at the nativity site. The shepherds are on their knees in front of the baby Jesus. And then this one's a little harder to tell, but they go away praising God for all that God has done. And this shepherd here, he's waving his hands. So it's a cool place to go, and you really sense the presence of the Lord there. Okay, technical.
Go.
And we're back. Yardenit is where the Jordan River empties the Sea of Galilee. So it's way up north, and this is a tourist trappy place where you can either be baptized or affirm your baptism if you're a Lutheran in the same water that Jesus was baptized in. However, this is not the site where Jesus was baptized. I'll show you that in a minute. Anyway, these are the 7 Lutherans that were there. This guy is actually from Scotland, but he is one of our hosts. So he's a Knights Templar, and he's our host. And all of these guys, that's me. And my hair's not really that great. I don't know. But I got more hair than this guy. This guy is actually from our synod. He serves a church up north. But anyway, I knew there was no question that I was going to do this. It wouldn't have mattered if it was snowing. I was going in. And so I didn't know exactly how this was going to take place. I didn't know how it was going to happen. And so our host kind of walked us through how it might go down. And so I went to this guy and I said, you know what? I'd like you to do me. And then a couple of these guys said, hey, they wanted me to do them. And I said, well, this guy's doing me. Why don't we just have him do us all? That was before I knew it was 42 degrees in the water. And he was a soldier. He stayed in the water for probably 20 minutes as he did all of this. So, you know, just like we do in church, water is poured over the person's head 3 times. I was dunked 3 times right there. And then he said a prayer with me. It was an amazing experience. It was fantastic. That's not the place where Jesus was baptized. This is where Jesus was baptized. In the scripture, it says that Jesus was baptized in Bethany beyond the Jordan. The reason no one goes there is because it's beyond the Jordan, in the country of Jordan, which is hostile today. So no one goes there, but that's what it looks like. And it is a little browner there too. All right, moving on. The Sea of Galilee. So we spent 2 nights on the Sea of Galilee. I mean, from where I was, you could hit it with a baseball. From the kibbutz I was staying in. These are pictures from my camera. This is another boat coming in as ours was going out, but that's the kind of boat we were on. And this is from our boat. Look at that. It was as smooth as glass that day. And so we motored out into the middle of the lake. It's not a big lake. And then they turned off the motor. We read some of the stories about Jesus being on the water. And then we sang a couple of songs. Truly the presence of the Lord is in this place was one of them. And it was one of those hair on the back of your neck moments. It was cold out there too. But it was sunny, so it wasn't so bad. There is a museum associated with the kibbutz I was staying in, and it's also associated with that boat launch. And this, one time they had, I don't know why, but the Sea of Galilee had, the shore had, water had gotten low. I don't know how that happens, but it did. And this showed up. They could see it coming up out of the water. And so they did this excavation, and they carbon dated it, and it comes from the 1st century. No one says that that's the boat that Jesus, rode on. That's not even in play. But it's from the same time period, and this is what it would look like. So, in preschool today, we had the story of Jesus calming the sea. And I told the kids that I was on that lake, and the boat that Jesus would have been in would have been a very small boat, and it would have been very scary. So when you're up there in the Galilee area, there are a lot of sites that are famous from the Bible. One of them is the site of the multiplication. That's what they call it, but it's where the fishes and loaves took place. In Galilee, they have 2 sites because there are 2 stories of multiplication in the Bible. And so they have 2 sites picked out. There is a church up there, and there's a church everywhere at these holy sites, it seems, and that's because there's great reverence for these holy sites. This is the Church of the Multiplication, and as you can see, it's really not very dramatic or exciting. This is the actual site of the multiplication. Now you're going to see another view of this from up top of the mountain, but this is, we were on the road going around this mountain, and this is a place that we saw. Now, this is the Sea of Galilee over here, so it's all mountainous coming out of the water. This big white thing, that's all vegetation like banana trees. That's banana trees. Amazing amount of banana trees. Okay, this is the same area now from up top at the Mount of Beatitudes, because it happened just above the place of multiplication. This is the Mount of Beatitudes, the church at the Mount of Beatitudes. Again, down here is the place of the multiplication. Obviously, I didn't take this picture. I wanted you to be able to see the church there, because you can't get a very good picture like that anywhere else. There you can see the Sea of Galilee. Tiberias is over here. I have a beautiful picture. I think I put it in the Constant Contact of Tiberias at night, because I was staying at the kibbutz and it was right around the, right around the bend of the lake. The lights at night. I should have put it in the slideshow today, but I forgot. So that's the front of that building, and see, it doesn't look very big there, but when you see it from an aerial view, it's quite large. Anyway, that's what you see from the top there, looking down over the Sea of Galilee. And that's the spot where Jesus taught the Beatitudes. Another place where you can just feel the Lord's presence. Going to move on to Canaan. Canaan is now known as whatever that is, Kafra Canaan. And it's such a small area that it doesn't even show up on Google Maps. But it's where that red dot is. And as you can see, here's the Sea of Galilee. Here's Tiberias. I was staying right in that area. So I was on the lake over here in this area. Yardenit is down here where I got wet. And now we're in Canaan. Canaan, of course, is famous for the first miracle of Jesus, where he was invited to a wedding, took all his disciples. So he's already called his disciples on the banks of the Sea of Galilee and in other places. And then he went to Cana at the invitation of his mother. Of course, this is not the church where Jesus went for that wedding. This is built on the site of that wedding party. It's a beautiful, small church. This is what the inside looks like. I took that picture. You can see the pews are only probably 5 or 6 feet wide. And there are people there all the time who are renewing their vows, or maybe they go on a pilgrimage just to get married. Well, that's, I think, as good as it gets. I think these people were Filipino, as I recall. But they got married. Now we're going to move on to Nazareth, and Nazareth is very close to where Cana is, still over there in that same area. And this is called the Church of the Synagogue. Weird name, right? Church, synagogue in the same noun, but yet it is the place where Jesus taught in his own hometown, in Nazareth. So, of course, it's been built up now. The city's built up now. And this is it. You've got to go through this little door back here to get back in here. And once you're in here, that's just about all there is. There's not much to it. But this is the place where Jesus unfurled the scroll and said, these words have been fulfilled in your hearing, speaking of himself. They didn't like that, did they? So they took him to the Mount of Precipice right there, and this is a close-up of it, and they were going to hurl him off. Yet he escaped. Apparently, this was a thing that they did. Now, you see this weird-looking shadow bit? That's the bus reflection. So we were driving by. Ezra's telling us that that's the peak. So I didn't walk up there, but there's a shrine up there too. There's a marker and a shrine up there that says this is where Jesus was about to get thrown off the top of the mountain.
I'm going to move on to Capernaum now. And Capernaum, these are not in any particular order as if, this was the way that Jesus traveled. But we're now moving to Capernaum, and as you can see, Capernaum is at the north end of the Sea of Galilee. The interesting thing about Capernaum is that it doesn't exist anymore. It's a city in ruins. And there is this really spacey looking church built on top of it. It's a Catholic church, and they were having mass, so I couldn't go in. It's built on top of the ruins of a synagogue. So this is a synagogue built underneath here. Capernaum is famous. Anybody know why Capernaum is famous in the Bible? Early in Jesus' ministry, Peter's mother-in-law takes ill, and Jesus heals her. And undoubtedly, her house is right in here somewhere, because that's all the bigger Capernaum is, just a little village. There's a synagogue, another synagogue, a later synagogue there, and that's it here, and these are the ruins of it. And Ezra pointed out to this thing that's carved into the floor, and it's called a basileos, and basically it is a game that Roman soldiers used to play. I have something written down here that I want to read to you. Basileos, also known as the Game of Kings, was a favorite pastime activity for Roman soldiers. A large number of such etchings are known to exist. Most of these games were played out of boredom and to relieve the soldiers of becoming weary. In the Roman army's version of Basileos, the winner of each round of each game would get to choose a different way to torture the prisoner in the guard's collective charge. This included the dressing of the prisoner up as a king and in turn mocking and abusing the victim prior to the act of execution. You will see this again in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Does that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up? Moving on to Chorazin. Now, the New Testament doesn't say that Jesus ever went to Chorazin. He most certainly did. It's one of the places he cursed because they were unreceptive to his ministry. Chorazin today is a ruins. This is just one example of a house. So again, don't get thinking they lived in nice sided houses. They lived in stone dwellings. I thought this was fascinating. These archaeologists were there while we were there, and they were painstakingly restoring this wall. And when I'm talking painstakingly, those little brushes we used when we painted our models when we were kids? That's what they have. Oh my. I mean, they're like a 1/4 inch wide brushes, and they're brushing like a mortar compound in between all these rocks. At that rate, don't expect Chorazin to rise from the ruins. However, there are some cool things here. Remember this? Yeah. I showed you that back at Nissen Brothers. Notice how the disciples are all sitting, or rather lounging, around this very low table. This is authentic. This is Chorazin, and this is the dining room. This is my guide, Ezra, and he got several of us to pose, not really pose, to act it out, to say this is how things would have been. This is a doorway, so the woman of the house, if she was allowed in that room at all, would be sitting there so that she could get out into the kitchen. And these, don't get thinking there was a dining room table. This was just a pile of rocks, and that's what they leaned on and ate on. In Chorazin, there was a synagogue, and this is the ruins of the synagogue. These steps have not been modified. That's exactly how they were. They have put this thing back together. This was apparently a very beautiful synagogue. There are renderings of it and drawings of it there. This they found in the synagogue. This is called the Seat of Moses.
And in first century synagogues, that was where the rabbi or the visiting priest or whoever, the highest in authority, would sit. And that's a replica of it. The original is located in the Museum of Israel. We're going to move on to Magdala. And Magdala is up here, right off the coast of the Sea of Galilee. It's now called Migdal. I don't know why, but it is. And it was most certainly where Mary Magdalene was from. And undoubtedly, Jesus was there in his ministry. So this is a 5-star hotel over here. Ezra said that you can't stick a spade in the ground in Israel without hitting some kind of a historic site. Well, sure enough, they tried to build this 5-star hotel, and they came across the ruins of ancient Magdala. So, underneath this thing here is this. This is part of the city that's been restored, and this is the synagogue. Right here is a high place, and that's where someone would stand and read, but that's not the important thing. This is where all the folks would sit in a circle around the synagogue. And in the center of the synagogue is this thing, which is this thing. And this, remember in the first century, the leader would be seated, and everybody else would sit higher up than the leader. And so he would sit in the center, the rabbi would sit here in the center and unfurl the scroll on this desk, so to speak, and everyone would sit around the person to hear the teaching. By the way, this is original 2,000-year-old floor, mosaic floor. You can't really tell in this picture, but it's carved all the way around. There's a big Star of David on the top, which was a weird thing that Ezra picked out because the Star of David really didn't become a thing until the 20th century. But there is a menorah right here, and these are 2 vases, probably representing the purity rituals of the Jews. And then there are other carvings all the way around. And then next week, we're going to be moving into Jerusalem, the Jerusalem that Jesus would have known. And you'll have to use your imagination a lot, because it is not today what it was then. Any questions for me? Yes?
Did Mary have to go where she was born to pay taxes, or do they automatically go where the man goes?
Yes, they automatically go where the man goes. Interestingly enough, since the restoration of Israel, now ancestry goes by the mother's line. So you're only a Jew if your mom was a Jew. And I don't know why they did that.
I know you said. What was Helena's motivation?
Helena became a Christian and asked her son if she could go take a Holy Land pilgrimage. And she convinced him that these sites were worthy of restoration and recovery. And he apparently had loads of money and said, "Sure, fine, Mom, do whatever you need to do." He loved his mother. He was very devoted to his mother. No one knows whether Constantine became a Christian. He made it legal to be a Christian in the Holy Roman Empire. Yes?
Were those boats made of olive wood then?
I presume so.
Did they treat him or anything? I'm curious.
Down there at the Dead Sea, you can find some really thick, tarry stuff. I think maybe you saw a picture of me wearing it. Believe it or not, there are stores that sell nothing but Dead Sea beauty products. The mud, the salt, it's amazing, and it's expensive, like all women's cosmetics. Back to the question about Mary. So the thing that is almost certainly true, is that she was a resident and born in Nazareth. How else would she have met Joseph? How else would that arranged marriage happen? But in Jerusalem, you'll go by a building and it'll say, the birthplace of Mary. And we walked right by it. And so I stopped Ezra and I said, hey, you know, it says that. He said, yeah, there's one of those in every town.
How old was Mary?
I don't know, but she was young. I don't know. People say 13, 12, something like that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yes.
The star you showed us on the floor.
The basileos.
Yeah, tell me again about that.
It's a game.
No, not that one. There was a star, like it looked like a metal star.
Oh yeah. So that star marks the place that they identify as the birthplace of Jesus.
That's what I thought.
And if
you
it's,
said.
I didn't get there. In the grotto. So again, it would be in a
They
cave.
didn't want to wait 2.5 hours.
So remember, it would be in a cave. So that's probably the church is built on grade, and then you have to go down in there to get to the cave where he was born. There's a very similar star at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the place where the cross was allegedly set. Now, I did get to that one twice, and there's a big star on the floor, just like that. You have to go under an altar to get to it, and you can reach your hand down in that hole about this far and touch the rock, you know, the bedrock of Golgotha. So I think that I don't know, I didn't get to that, to the Church of the Nativity, so I presume you can stick your hand down in there and touch the rock. I don't know. Didn't get there. Any other questions? Yes?
Do you have a favorite place or something that you did?
Yes, I'll save that for week 5.
Pardon me?
I'll save that for week 5. When we go through the Via Dolorosa. You already know what it is. If you think about my ministry and how many times I've said it, you know what it is. But I'll save it for week 5. Yes?
You know how they say, when you said he was born in a cave?
Yeah.
Okay, now, when they made the movie, it shows with him being like a straw, hay, you know, things that we put in.
Like a regular barn from Ohio.
Yeah, the movies show that, and then why did they show the movies being him in a cave?
I don't know. Right there at the Church of the Shepherds, I mean, it's just 90 degrees and 100 yards. They have a couple of recovered shepherds' caves. And this is where the shepherds would have gone when their shift was over. And I'm telling you, it's very small inside, and they would jam their sheep in there with them. And it's amazing. Yeah.
Stay warm.
Right. So that wouldn't have been their home. That's just where they went for respite. Yes.
Well, all the mangers now show cows and donkeys but you keep saying sheep.
Right.
Do they not have cows? and
Yes, they do
donkeys?
have cows and donkeys and goats and mules. Chickens, probably, I suppose. Well, the cock crowed, right? So we know that they had chickens. Unless that wasn't a chicken. Maybe it was some other bird. Yeah, I'm sure there are other, when we were heading down 90 to the Dead Sea, there were cattle ranches down there where there were numerous cattle. You could see from the road. But honestly, the ground is so poor that, you know, grazing is about all you're going to do. However, I'm not going to show you the Dead Sea because it doesn't fit into the schema that I've devised, but there are acres and acres of date trees that look like palm trees. If you see palm trees in Israel, they're not palm trees, they're date trees. And there are olive orchards, and there are banana fields, and fig trees. Pomegranate is like the national fruit. That's everywhere. You name it. Orange trees, grapefruit trees, tangerine trees, they all grow there. Even down there in the Dead Sea where you're thinking all it is rocks and sand and salty water. How could anything grow down there? And the roads are lined with them. Huge plots. Anything else? I love it that you're here. I really do love it that you're here. I think you're interested, not so much in me, but in what I saw. And if I can be your feet and your eyes and your ears, then let me be that, because I was thrilled to go there, and the mission of the Knights Templar is to come and see so you can go and tell, and so I feel like I'm doing my part of the mission. Thanks. See you next week. Oh yeah, we have another verse of the song.
Uh-oh.
The third verse.